Speaker, for the opportunity to say a few words under the order made under the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act. Before I deal with the issue at hand, with your permission, and as I said earlier, I wish to make a clarification using my own time with regard to certain matters raised by Honorable Vimal Veeravansa a little while ago, and also by Honorable Douglas Devananda 2 days ago, about the release of certain persons in the Mardankerni area on the night of 3rd of January. This issue was published in a gossip column in the Sunday Times newspaper last Sunday, the 6th of January, and repeated in the Daily Mirror newspaper of 7th of January. It both did not identify me. Nevertheless, very clearly by innuendo, I was identified as the person concerned. I immediately issued a statement, and some media institutions have carried it, but most others haven't. Therefore, I think it's important that I make it here. On the 3rd January night around 8 p.m., there was a vehicle in the Champiyampattu area suspiciously going up and down. That was noticed by the youth of the area. Now, I will have to say that it was around in this area that a couple of years ago there were attempts made on my life, which is a matter of a High Court case where the Attorney General has indicted 5 people in HC 242 of 2018. The matter is now pending in the High Court of Colombo. It came up last on the 7th of January, and the next date of trial is 26th of April 2019, and anyone can check the court record with regard to the 2 assassination attempts on my life. That was around in this area. I was to go for an event in the school the next morning at 8:30, Champiyampattu school. And because of this, the area youth were a little vigilant, and when an unidentified vehicle with men in civil clothes were moving about, the youth of the area stopped the vehicle and checked to see who they were. They claimed to be from the police. They were in civil attire. They were asked to show their identity cards. They refused to show the identity cards, but they pulled out their pistols and got into the vehicle and fled. The youth gave chase behind them on their motorcycles, and it was the youth who informed the army checkpoint ahead that a vehicle, a suspicious vehicle, was coming that way and to stop that vehicle. It was the army who actually stopped that vehicle. So contrary to what is being spread, the youth were not arrested or apprehended. It was the other way around. It was the army who stopped this vehicle of men. And of course, when they were stopped, it was found that they were actually from the police. They were from the Vice Squad under the directions of the DIG of the area. And then when it was found that they were from the police, the local police was called and they were handed over to the local police. But at that point, they made allegations that these youth had assaulted them. And therefore, 4 youth were also taken into custody. That is what happened. There was no ganja that was taken into custody. There was no raid on that. It was a case of mistaken identity because of the extra vigilance that was exercised by the area youth, and it was they who gave chase and with the assistance of the army apprehended these police personnel who were in civil clothes. But they were taken into custody. Therefore, I spoke to the DIG. Naturally, in an area where people had acted with vigilance for the sake of my own security, in an area where there were supposedly 2 assassination attempts. I don't want to say anything beyond that because there's a case pending, and those persons are free to prove their innocence. But there is a case pending. In that area, they had exercised extra vigilance, and they caught these people. There was no ganja involved. So I spoke to the DIG, and I explained to him what happened. I did not ask DIG Gunratna to release them. I told him, this is what has been reported to me. He said, I will make inquiries and take appropriate action. And I heard that the next morning, he had released these 4 youth. Now, this is being portrayed as me interfering in some kind of law and order situation and me interfering to have ganja smugglers released. Far from the truth. And it's a matter of regret that 2 newspapers of repute have also published this in their gossip columns, and I request those newspapers to please carry this clarification. If you were bold enough to publish that, you should have named me. There was no necessity for you to hide my name and make a publication of this sort. That said, sir, let me get on to the order that we are discussing today. I was listening to speeches being made from the government side. Honorable Ajit Manaperuma spoke just before me. He mentioned various cases. He mentioned the case of Lasantha Vikramatunga. He mentioned the case of Prageet Eknaligoda. He mentioned the case of Wasim Tajuddin. I want to ask the government, why nothing has been done with regard to even those 3 cases that you are mentioning? You only talk. You don't do anything. Minister of Justice is here. 4 years you had this government. You only come and mouth these words and go. You haven't taken any action. The killers have not been apprehended. They haven't been brought to justice yet. No, please, Minister, you can reply way later. Don't take my time. You haven't done a thing. It is, your government hasn't done a thing. Year after year, session after session, you say all these names. You are complicit. You are complicit with the previous regime in covering up these crimes. Only words, nothing else. I went for Lasantha's 10th year remembrance just 2 days ago. I remember carrying his casket on my shoulder at his funeral. True, 4 years ago, on that very day, regime changed. But what has happened? What has happened? Why has there been no progress? 2 days ago, several members of the government, and indeed several members from the opposition, spoke about the independence of the judiciary. I want to say something. One swallow doesn't make a summer. One swallow doesn't make a summer. I too bow to the judiciary for the manner in which they acted with independence in the attempted coup that started on the 26th of October. But that's just one instance. We are talking about the murder of journalists. We are mentioning names. But can members in the government benches even mention the names of Tamil journalists who were killed during this period of time? Do you even know one name? Do you even know one name? At a recent event, I said 14 Tamil journalists were killed during the period of 20 years. And someone has done a fact check And they have said maybe not 14, in the period between 1999 and 2009. So that will make it 10 years. In the 10-year period, 9 Tamil journalists were killed. All right, so let's say 9 Tamil journalists were killed. Has anything been done? Not even an investigation has commenced. Other things, yes, Eknali got some investigation going on. Vikramatunga, some investigation going on. But if you have a Tamil name, you don't even start an investigation. You don't even start an investigation. And you have the gall to come here and say that you have independent institutions. You are bold enough to assert that there is no necessity for international involvement. But I'm glad that 2 days ago, in several speeches made in this House, at least all of those speakers conceded that there must be a judicial mechanism for the allegations of war crimes. In fact, my good friend, Honorable Arundika Fernando, even went to the extent of saying, no war in any part of the world is ever fought without war crimes being committed. I'm thankful to him for that. He conceded that war crimes are committed in every war. Every other member, even from the JVP, Honorable Bimal Ratnayaka said, war crimes inquiry must be a local inquiry. So at least after 9 years or almost 10 years, you've come to the realization that there must be a judicial inquiry with regard to war crimes. Now the question of independence. I gave some examples. Why if you have a Tamil name, there won't be even an investigation commenced. Isn't that a good reason why you need neutral umpires? Now in cricket, we did not protest when you had to have some foreigner come and stand here and umpire matches, international matches. Why? Why do we allow it? We allow it because justice must not only be done, but also seen to be done. This is a different issue. If it is between the UNP and the SLFP, and you go to the court here, there is some chance that the court acts with independence. And time and again we have seen that. Sometimes we have not even seen that. But when you are talking about a war that was fought by the government of Sri Lanka against another armed group, the government of Sri Lanka cannot be the arbiter. The government of Sri Lanka cannot be, whichever organ of government it is, the government of Sri Lanka cannot be the person who inquires into it. Anyone will agree that any judicial mechanism must be independent. It must not be partial. What is independence? A party involved in the dispute cannot inquire into the dispute. That is independence. If the government of Sri Lanka was involved in the dispute, the government of Sri Lanka cannot inquire into it. You need an independent arbiter to look into that. Honorable Vasudeva Nanayakara asked questions from the Minister of Justice and said, there are crimes that are not even declared as crimes in this country. The central authority can send the person off. Now I want to give one example. When Sepala Ekanayaka hijacked Alitalia aircraft, we did not have a law in this country for air piracy. After the event, we passed a law in this parliament, Air Piracy Act. How was it possible that for a retroactive, that to bring such a retroactive legislation? Because our constitution recognizes that even if no local legislation has been passed, if it is a crime that is recognized by the civilized community of nations, you can make law with retrospective effect. If it is a crime that is recognized by the civilized community of nations, you can bring in law that recognizes it as an offense. subsequent to the event. This issue of war crimes or international crimes, as they are properly called, we don't have laws in this country yet. We still have no laws in this country. We must make those laws with retrospective effect, because those are international crimes. Those are crimes that have been recognized by civilized community of nations. Therefore, that must be done. Now, we are cooperating in criminal matters like this. Why are we doing that? We can't be, physically we are an island, but we can't be an island separate from all other countries in the world. We belong to a community of nations. We have relationship between other countries in the world. We are, as much as possible, complying with international standards. That's expected of us. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't affect our sovereignty. That's a false notion to say that our sovereignty is, people don't know what sovereignty means if they speak like that. We are part of a community of nations, a civilized community of nations, then we must adopt all of those standards that are to be applied. Now, if people say here, yes, war crimes have been committed, and we are not saying one side committed it. All international reports very clearly say both sides committed. Now, when I say this, I know I come under fire from my community for admitting that the LTTE committed war crimes. But I'm ready to say that. No war, I agree with Honorable Arundhika Fernando, no war is fought without the commission of war crimes. All parties committed. Now, why are you shy to say that? At least now you've agreed that there must be an inquiry, but it must be local. Why local? With no fear, you can face any tribunal. In that respect, I commend Honorable Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca, who has repeatedly said that he is ready to go before any international tribunal. He has repeatedly said that. He was a commander of the Sri Lanka army at that point in time. He has no hesitation in saying that. Why are you scared? If the army commander at that time repeatedly says publicly, why is everybody else scared about this? If it is not independent, if it is to be independent, it must necessarily be international. It must necessarily be international. Local disputes between political parties, our judiciary might be independent. But when it comes to the government as opposed to forces that were vowed to separate the country, one doesn't know. One doesn't take chances with doubts over independence of the judiciary. Therefore, I want to make it very clear, when I say this, it doesn't mean that I am against the sovereignty of the country. Far from that. Countries that have progressed, countries that value human rights, countries that value fundamental freedoms are always ready to accept others to participate in these processes. We participate in these processes with regard to other countries. When on Gaza Strip, there was bombing by Israel on a flotilla of ships, the UN appointed a committee of inquiry. And our own Parlita Kohana was a member of that inquiry. So we participate with regard to allegations of crimes committed by other governments. But our own matters, we scream, saying sovereignty is being breached. Double standards. It is those double standards that I talked about earlier also. The reason why, just on the issue of journalists alone, not even one investigation has commenced. Not that other investigations that are happening here have gone anywhere. Just eyewash. Just eyewash. Wasting everybody's time, having matters taken up in the magistrates' court month after month or 3 months at a time. Right? Nobody is ever apprehended. You say so much about what the previous government did, you haven't done a thing. You haven't been able to, not that you haven't been able to, you are unwilling to bring the perpetrators to book. Enough time has been given. 4 years is a very long time to bring perpetrators to book. Even with regard to corruption, nothing has been done. All those serious corrupt deals that you talk about, nothing has been done. The only conclusion one can come to is that this is how it goes on in this country. When you are on this side, you make allegations against that side. Then you change chairs, other side makes allegations against you. But you have a good understanding between the two of you. We'll just make noise, but we will never find anybody guilty. So you take turns, right, to be corrupt, to be violent, to breach the law. Other side shouts. Then the turn changes. The other side is corrupt, is violent, breaches all the laws. This side will shout. Only shouting. Nobody is ever be tried or convicted. That's an understanding between the two main parties in this country. So that is another reason why we say serious issues like international crimes can't be left to mechanisms like that. There has to be, and there will be, I say with confidence, these are matters that cannot be brought under these false notions of sovereignty. Some of these commitments are crimes against humanity. That is how, after the Second World War, certain persons were found guilty in the Nuremberg trials. They obeyed orders, higher orders. But that wasn't accepted because it said higher than municipal laws, higher than a country's laws, there is a thing called natural laws. And crimes against humanity is a matter for the world, not for just one country. So matters that touch upon international law, jus cogens, customary international law, are all laws in this country also. You don't have to pass domestic legislation for that, like the Air Piracy Act. So don't fool yourselves into thinking that you can continue to fool the people of this country. Tell them the truth. Tell them that if something has gone wrong, it must be dealt with. You must face it. There is no shame in facing truth. Absolutely no shame in facing the truth. There is shame in covering up the truth. So at least now, on a day when you move to have these mutual assistance, cooperate with other countries with regard to crimes. And I agree with the minister that these are not matters that one needs to be worried about. These are not matters under which, somebody accused of war crime can be taken away. No, this has nothing to do with that. And that is our disappointment. Our disappointment is these are nothing to do with that. We want you to bring proper legislation to make international crimes in this country. Why are you not doing that with retrospective effect? You must do that. That's a commitment that this country has made to the international community, to the world. If we want to move forward, if we want to really be known as a country that values the rule of law, that values fundamental freedoms, that values human rights, those must be done. And the people of this country must be educated, must be told that it must be done, and that there is no shame in that, and that is not a matter through which you betray the country. Thank you.